Hello, hi there. Welcome to our Greens live series, where every Friday we're holding a live discussion on a different topic. So you can view previous discussions online, including we discussed climate strikes, public health, universal basic income. Thank you for joining us if you're watching online. Sorry about the delay. We've had some tech difficulties, as is the way with our new Zoom lives. So sorry about that. Thank you for being here. It's brilliant to have you. And you can leave comments and questions on the Green social media pages. So I'm your host. My name is Kim Long, and I am a Green local councillor in Glasgow. I represent Denniston, and the area that I represent has a lot of people who are asylum seekers and refugees. So through my work, I have become pretty involved in asylum justice issues. And today I have some brilliant people around my virtual kitchen table. Thank you so much to you two for joining us. We were really hoping that Robert Makutsa, who's an activist from the Unity Centre in Glasgow, could join us, and unfortunately we just had some technical difficulties getting him on the call. So he might be able, we're still working on it behind the scenes, he might be able to join us, which would be amazing. So bear with us if that does happen during the meeting, but otherwise we'll crack on. Thank you so much to you two for joining us. I will invite you to introduce yourself and your role, and just let us know what kind of week this has been for you. Annika.
Hi, I'm Annika. I'm director of a charity based in Glasgow called Glasgow Night Shelter. This week has been fairly typical for me. Quite a lot of cake, quite a lot of biscuits, but also just still trying to adjust to everything happening on a computer. I really miss human contact.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Elion. I'm a biomed student and I'm also an anti-racism activist. I think this week has been very, very tough to get through. I think that's the whole general inquiry for everyone, but I'm glad it's Friday.
Yeah, we are crawling to the end of the week. So we're going to go into a discussion about asylum and immigration. And just before we go into that, I just want to give some context for people who are maybe less familiar. So to start with, everyone on earth has the right to seek refugee protection. In the UK, people have to present themselves in Croydon, outside London, and then are dispersed to various cities while their claim is being processed. Often people are just kind of put on a bus and end up in a flat, no idea where they are. Glasgow is a dispersal city, so we're a city that hosts asylum seekers who are put here by the UK government. Some areas in Scotland, and we'll maybe touch on this later, have hosted Syrian refugees under that kind of specific scheme, which is just a really different context. If you've already got your refugee status when you arrive here, that's a very different context to people who are still trying to fight for that status. Asylum and immigration is UK policy, so it's set by the UK government. It's not devolved to Scotland, so the Home Office sets the rules. And the other thing to say is that people who are seeking asylum can come under the term of what's called NRPF, which is no recourse to public funds, which means you're not allowed to access services like benefits or homelessness services. So in Glasgow, the council really only deals with people once they have their status. Everyone else who's still fighting is in accommodation which is outsourced to a private company called Mears, who don't answer to the council, and they answer to the Home Office, and the Home Office answers to nobody at all. So it does mean in Glasgow we have this amazing network of grassroots activist groups and community projects who are working all the time to support people, and there's a lot of expertise from those people in those groups, and also from people who are going through the system and have been through the system. So we'll hear a bit more about that work right now. So Annika, tell us please about your work at the night shelter pre-lockdown, so pre-coronavirus, please.
Thank you. So we, Glasgow Night Shelter works in the gaps between people who have been dispersed to Glasgow and haven't received what's called a positive decision. So that means where the Home Office decides that it believes you, that you have a claim for asylum. And the UK government's policy means that if the Home Office decides that it doesn't believe you, that it thinks that you don't have a legitimate claim to protection in the UK, that they have the best course of action they can take is to make you destitute, because the hostile environment believes that is what will mean that you will return to a country from which you've come from or been through along the way. It's called the hostile environment for exactly those reasons. It was named that by Theresa May. It's meant to make the UK feel like a hostile place to you, and that you will return, in their words. That means, like Kim said, if you have no recourse, it means that you can't access services. It means that you can't get help when you need it, and that means that people are forced into destitution, and that's the gap where our organisation tries to step into the best of our abilities. So for the last 10 years, we've been providing overnight accommodation for mostly men who are destituted by the system, and as far as possible linking them with support, including with support from people from the Unity Centre, from Refugee Council, from British Red Cross, from Refugee Survival Trust. There's a really incredible network of organisations in Glasgow, but we've been the main accommodation provider, and the most that we've ever really been able to offer safely is beds for about 24 people at any one time, which means that there's a big gap of people who are made homeless by the system, but who do not have a route out of homelessness through the normal statutory routes to get help. So our kind of working week normally before the lockdown was in providing that accommodation, so making sure that as many folk as possible had access to accommodation that could meet their basic needs, but also campaigning for and pushing for and fundraising for there being more accommodation for people who'd been destituted by the asylum system. We've got a bit of a line that we say, which is you're not end homelessness in Glasgow unless there's a plan in place for this population. And what accommodation there isn't enough of it, and what there isn't very good. And we have included our own accommodation in that category as of not very good, because it's not the same as what people who've got a statutory route to support in the homelessness sector are entitled to. So it's created a racist system, and we aim to kind of like actively combat that racism in the city by providing accommodation to the best possible standard that's lawful, but that is, it's not provided through the public route. So we provide accommodation, but we also campaign for there to be more accommodation, and for any accommodation to be better and equivalent, to be equal in its quality and standard.
Thank you. Leonie, can you tell us a little bit about your experience of the immigration system?
Okay, so as you know, I'm an immigrant. Me and my family came from Nigeria in 2005 when I was 5 years old. There was 5 of us, so I have 4 other siblings, and my mom and dad came, and that's when we started our 10-year family plan to like get our citizenship in the UK. But around I want to say 2010, 2009, my dad decided to go back to Nigeria, and because he was kind of like the main person on our application, we had to restart our whole application. So before that, my dad was like working and all that stuff, and we were able to like provide for our family. But once he went back to Africa, it was almost like we cut ties in a way. He was still like married to my mom, and he was still our dad, but I don't know, like we kind of cut ties. And so it was just my mom and 5 of us. And when we started our application, we had no recourse of public funds as well. And we didn't have like our passports, nothing like that. All of that was in the Home Office. So my mom wasn't able to get a job in the UK because she didn't have like the right documents and stuff like that. So like it was kind of like every time she would go for an interview, they would ask her like for all these documents. And then when she would ask the Home Office if she was able to use these documents, they would say like, if we give you these documents, then you're gonna have to restart your whole application again. And it's like, we've already done it for the second time. So how are we possibly going to be able to do that? So yeah, my mom wasn't able to get a job. So it was kind of really hard because it was just her and 5 siblings. So the way she was able to make a living was to like kind of like buy and sell stuff. So she would like buy all these like mobile phones and stuff like that, and then she would sell them. And it's kind of funny now, we kind of make fun of her because like she's able to know all this stuff about mobile phones, but she's not able to use them because she doesn't know how to use them. So we kind of laugh about it now, but at that point it was kind of like a really serious thing because we weren't able to like, she wasn't able to work, she wasn't able to like buy like basic stuff. So we were like, I think we were so close to being homeless at one point because like there was just not enough funds coming in. And there was one point where like she wasn't able to like buy like food and stuff, so she would have to go to like food shelters, and she would take me with her sometimes. And it was just like it was very like hurtful to see. Like there was a lot of people as well that I knew there that were also like in the same status as us. So there was one point where we had to like go to like food banks and stuff like that to be able to get food. But once we got like our kind of our documents, we actually didn't get our like passports and stuff till like February 2019. So that's when my mom was able to get like a proper job. The job she has now, she was luckily able to get it like, I want to say like 3 years ago, but it was very hard for her to kind of get those jobs because they kept asking her. And there was one point where she had to like contact a lawyer so that she was able to get like a letter from the Home Office saying that she is able to work, because like we didn't have our biometrics card either, so we weren't able to like do anything. And when I was in high school as well, I wasn't able to get like lunches and stuff like that. And because like my high school was so out of Glasgow, I was having to take like a bus to high school, so that was a really like expensive journey to take. And my big sister as well, because at that point she had left high school and she wasn't able to apply for university because that meant that she'd have to pay for it. And because like we literally didn't have any money, she wasn't able to do that. So she decided to like take a gap year, which I think really affected her because she didn't understand why she had to take a gap year when she was like one of the top students in her class, and she really wanted to like get out into the world, and she wasn't able to do that. So I also struggled personally with getting like funding as well, like SAS. For example, I went to like college last year and I wasn't able to, I didn't get SAS until like January after like the term had started, but it was kind of like a constant battle with my college because they kept asking me to pay like the tuition and stuff like that. And I knew that I had like the right documents to get SAS, but because I didn't have like my passport or anything like that to prove that I was like British, like I've been living here for that long, they kept like asking me to pay all this money that I just didn't have to pay. And then my sister had to go through the same thing. And it's just like, it was a constant struggle. And I just feel like there was no support for the reason I'm able to tell my story is because I know there's a lot of people who go through this kind of stuff every single day, and there's no support for them. There's nowhere for them to turn. That's why we're so thankful for like night shelters and food banks and stuff like that, because if it wasn't for that, we'd probably either be back in Nigeria by this time, or we'd be homeless or something like that, living on the streets. And yeah, it was a very, very difficult time. Like even till today, it still affects me because we had to restart our application. I wasn't able to do stuff like little things like just like getting my driving license or like going out with my friends, stuff like that. I wasn't able to do that. And because of like, there's like, everybody knows like in high school, you have like trips where you're able to like go to Spain or France like that. Because I went to a school that racism was very like prominent and stuff like that, it was kind of difficult. And then especially telling people, I felt like I couldn't tell people I can't come on this trip because I don't have the right documents. They would just look at me even more differently than they were already looking at me. So I think that it greatly affected my like upbringing and stuff like that. Like I'm thankful like I'm able to have my passport and stuff like that, but because it's been with the Home Office for so long, everything that I have is out of date or invalid. I'm no longer able to use it. I think my passport went out of date in like 2007 or something like that, and I just got it in like February last year. And stuff like I was thinking of taking like a year abroad last year, and I'm no longer able to do that because like my passport is out of date. I can get that renewed, but because we have to like redo our application every 2.5 years, that when the time comes for me to do my application, it will be past the time that I'm able to take my year abroad, and I won't be able to do that because it's like a 6-month application wait. So even if I do my application, by the time it's done, it will already be like summer of 2022, and that's like my whole 3rd year just kind of wasted away doing my applications. And then it comes down to like the cost as well. So like, because obviously my mom is a working mom, there's like 5 of us that she needs to take care of by herself. I think for just like me, my other 2 siblings and just my mom, it would have to be like, I think it's like around like £8,000 that we need to pay to kind of get our application done. And it's very like hard to do that, especially for someone who has 5 kids and she doesn't have any support. Like the government won't give her any money. Like even like we did have recourse to public fund. We were able to get that, but for some reason, once we redid our application as well again, they took it back. So like last year, my brother and my little sister, we had to like buy them packed lunches and stuff like that, and then also like them getting to school and stuff like that. It was very, very difficult. And also because our school system is kind of like outside of Glasgow, sometimes you're able to like get funding to buy like bus passes and train passes and stuff like that. But because they're 2 different districts, we're not able to do that and stuff like that. And it was very hard as well getting like school lunches for them as well because of the school district and things like that. So yeah, it was a very, very challenging, and it still is a very, very challenging like experience. I think that there has to be more support for people going through this thing because there's not enough for like there's not enough that the government does for allowing all these people to come into their country and then completely like turning their backs on them, not giving them any support and stuff like that, and expecting them to like be able to thrive and be able to add more to the community when they don't have anything to add in the first place.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Leonie. It's really powerful to hear just the energy that has taken from your family and the constant bureaucratic. I mean, that's the thing that really the whole asylum system, the hostile environment, it's this very bureaucratic evil. It just makes everything so much harder than it needs to be. And there are these just sort of random rules at arbitrary stages that people just have to keep fighting. And the energy that you've really eloquently described in having to constantly just things that are easy for other people are not easy because of these barriers that are in your way. So I really appreciate you sharing your experience. Annika, I want to come to you about how the pandemic, how has coronavirus affected everything for people seeking asylum? What's that changed for your work?
So, as I said, we have been providing accommodation for about 24 men. And we've known that at any one time in Glasgow, there's around about 150 people who definitely need accommodation, so who are homeless. They're not necessarily rough sleeping, so kind of like not visibly homeless, but they don't have a safe place to stay. They are in like sofa surfing situations, exploitative situations. And so when the social distancing guidance was first introduced by the government, we saw two immediate problems. The first one was that the accommodation that we were providing for those 24 men wasn't going to meet the guidance. It wasn't going to be possible for the men to follow the guidance and be safe. The second thing was that all of the people that we knew who existed, who were, you know, maybe sleeping in someone's back kitchen or, you know, on a sofa or something, they were also going to be at risk of losing that accommodation, because people it'd be less possible for people to support them informally. So we pretty quickly went to the government and said, in fact, before the lockdown had happened, we went to the government and said, we need some help. This is a public health problem, but this is also a human rights issue, and we need you to help us provide enough accommodation for everyone who needs it. And to their credit, they did. And so on the 21st of June, 21st of March, we opened up a service that was double the size of what we had been doing. So with 48 ensuite bedrooms, and a 24-hour service. So what we'd been doing in our old night shelter was that we would open at 8 p.m. in the evening, and the guys would join each other for something to eat, and spend the night in a dormitory room, and we would shut at 9 o'clock the following morning. And in this new Corona land, we knew that wasn't safe. So what we opened was a temporary service with 48 bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms, and staff and meals and everything, all of the legal support and everything on site, 24 hours a day. And in the last 3 months, we have had just over 100 individuals stay with us during the for ranges of different times. Some people have been there right from the beginning, and some people have moved on to temporary home office support, which ends at the end of June, we think. And the staff team have worked an incredible amount of hours in order to make this possible. You know, we were a small charity running on part-time sessional contracts, and everyone has stepped up like you wouldn't believe, to make sure that we can be open 24 hours a day and that we can safely run a service for double the amount of people that we're used to supporting. So that's how coronavirus has shifted for us. We've basically doubled our service and changed it beyond recognition, really, and in a way that I think is in the right direction for the sort of thing that we should be able to have been providing anyways. But it's only been possible because we've had emergency funding, and our concerns now are, you know, what happens if that emergency funding finishes, and that's what we're working on right now to try and plan for that.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for how much you and your team have been doing. Every so often I just think, what would happen to this city, you know, if people like you were not standing in the gap? And it gives me doesn't bear thinking about. I was hoping that Robert would have been able to talk to this as well. For contrast, the situation that's facing other people who are currently in Glasgow seeking asylum. So people who would normally be in the sort of initial accommodation. So when you arrive in Glasgow, you have an initial accommodation, which is a period of kind of X amount of time that you're in one place, and then you will be moved to another place, none of which you have any control over. But because of coronavirus, the Home Office basically started phoning people saying, oh, you're in this category, we're coming to pick you up, bring all your stuff. and then were put in 3 different hotels in Glasgow city centre. So from having that place that in corona terms was actually safer because they were in a flat and they had, it was, you know, 1 or 2 people living there, so you would be a contained household. They've then been put in hotels with many other people, and certainly initially there were like communal meals, you know, communal tea urns and things like that, which is clearly unsafe. And the most sort of insidious thing that's happened as part of that is that people's normal financial support, which is like £37 a week, you know, we're not talking about a lot of money, but that financial support has been stopped. So it means people have no agency and no dignity over things, you know, buying toiletries, buying sanitary products, buying what you want to buy, but they don't have now that choice, because they just have the choice of what food that they're given, and that's taking a huge mental health toll. People have no idea how long it's going to be. They have no information. If they can't top up their phones because they don't have any money, then they can't talk to their lawyers. They can't work on their cases. Maybe some of the paperwork that they need is still in the flat that they had. So that's a really concerning situation in Glasgow that remains, and it will keep going. Okay, so we're going to take some questions from the audience. So thank you to everyone who has sent these in, and you can still keep typing, I think. Okay, so first question here is from Claudia. We are living in Aberdeenshire and would easily be able to host some refugees and asylum seekers. Why can people seeking rescue not be distributed more around the country? Annika, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, you did a really good kind of 101 at the beginning, Kim, on this, which is that the majority of people who are dispersed to Glasgow. So Glasgow is what's called a dispersal city and has been for 20 years. And there are currently no other dispersal areas in Scotland. It's the only local authority in Scotland, and it is the largest dispersal area in the whole of the UK. So I think there's 5,500 people in the asylum system in Glasgow at the moment. And I think that is quite scary for other local authorities to consider. They'll be, Kim, you will have a stronger sense of this from your work as a councillor. But I think some local authorities will be worried. What does it mean for them in terms of people who vote for their party? What does it mean for them in terms of their budget? And what does it mean for them in terms of the human rights that values that they hold if they are complicit in a system that is so deeply flawed as our immigration system in the UK at the moment. So one of the things that our organisation is trying to do at the moment is demonstrate that a kind of more humane way so that you can remove destitution from the asylum system. You should remove destitution from the asylum system. The asylum system should be completely overhauled, and immigration should be a devolved matter. But for as long as it's like this, we have to work to remove destitution from the system. And I think that would encourage more local authorities to take on, to see the advantages of what's essentially really good strategic migration, as well as the right thing to do from a human rights point of view as well, if it doesn't feel like there is a kind of political and economic negative political and economic consequences, which I think is what the local authorities in other areas are afraid of. Kim, you also mentioned some of the refugee settlement stuff, so the Syrian refugee resettlement stuff, and that's a different matter. And I'm afraid I don't know why Aberdeen hasn't been part of it, or maybe it has been part of it, but at a scale that I'm not, at a smaller scale that I'm not aware of. Dundee is an area that's quite well known for that, as is Bute and the west coast of Scotland. So I'm not sure if Aberdeen has ever been part of that, but in terms of being a dispersal city, I guess your elected members knowing that there is a population in Aberdeen that thinks that's a good thing is something that can be done locally, and reminding people that it's not an economic or political thing, it's a human rights issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think because council budgets have been under so much strain and such severe pressure, then other councils look at Glasgow and think, we couldn't do that. But you're right, one thing that people can do is certainly write to their local elected representatives and make clear your views, Leonie, do you want to come in on this? Do you want to move on?
I'm fine with any.
Cool. So next question is from Ian. What changes would you like to see made to the asylum system to make it more humane? Greens want immigration to be devolved to Scotland and start again. Yes. So, and I would add, what would be the values and principles that you would want to start from? Because I think we'd always say scrap it and start again. So where would we start from? What would those sort of values be, and what do we want to change about it apart from everything? Leonie, do you want to come in first?
Yeah, I think that first of all, people going through the asylum seeking and immigration kind of process are treated less like human beings than actual normal people. So I think that first of all, we should start by treating people like normal human beings, and I think there should be some kind of maybe financial stability giving to the people who are going through this process, more emotional stability as well, kind of like emotional counseling and stuff like that, because it's not easy to kind of leave everything behind and come to a new country and then having to go through all these hardships and process. So yeah, I think there should be more an emotional investment into that. Yeah. That's...
Thanks. Annika?
I couldn't agree more. If we must have borders and systems, then they should be humane, they should be anti-racist, they should be proactive in their equalities approach. I wouldn't want to try and design an immigration system, because I think they end up caught in all sorts of historic complexities of structural racism and things. So I wouldn't want to have the job of doing it. But I think the values and principles that Elione refers to should be the basis of anything we do, never mind an immigration system.
Yeah, I think one of the campaigns at the moment that various groups are talking about is the right to work. So that's a really ridiculous part of the current system, that if you're going through it, if you're waiting for your asylum claim to be decided, which literally takes years, you are not allowed to work. So there's so many people who have skills, who have passions, who have the drive, and who also want to have the right to support their family, and themselves by using their skills and their talents. And also, that's how you meet people. That is how you work your way into a community, is through work a lot of the time. That's how you afford childcare, and if you do not have the right to work, then you cannot do all of those things. So that would be a really simple thing to do straight away to make the system fairer. It's obviously got economic benefits as well. I think that one of the things that that people maybe have a misconception that we have a fair system, that if you just go through all the hoops, it's maybe a bit complicated, but if you just do all the right things, then you'll be fine. And the thing that keeps shocking me over and over again is how ridiculous the hostile environment is and how hard it makes it for people. So some of the things you were saying, Elione, about the having to restart your process, and I wonder if either of you can think of other examples that you've seen of how bad it is in practice. One thing that I've seen is there was a mum and her kids, and they were given 24 hours notice of eviction, and the way that they were given that was on a letter, and it said you have the right to appeal, and it did not say where you could put that appeal. There was no telephone number and there was no email address. And eventually at the bottom of 2 pages of writing, which may not be in a language that you can understand, but at the bottom of that, it said you can fax something, you can fax some documents to some. I was like, I have never touched a fax machine. Like, where is this lady who has all her kids to look after going to find a fax machine? Like, it is unbelievable. But it's not an accident. It's not like an admin mistake, because it is routine. So I wonder, have either of you got examples of ways that this, shows how complicated and that kind of bureaucratic evil that I was talking about?
Well, I made friends with a girl who we actually became friends because her family were immigrants as well, and they had been moved, I think, like 6 times since they came to the UK. So the last time they moved was actually a 24-hour notice. It's her. She's got 2 other siblings and her mom. So yeah, they were moved like close to Denniston. So they had like 24 hours and they had to like leave again. I think with me as well, for example, I said like the kind of year abroad thing. So I was talking to a lawyer about that, and they said that it was like a possibility that I would be able to like make my application a little bit earlier, because you have to like do the full 2.5 years before you can apply again. So he was saying how I would be able to make my application a little bit earlier. Maybe I'll be able to go. And I got really excited. But then he told me that if I did that, I would have to restart my full application again. And I think this is like the last 2.5 years that me and my family had. So it was either take a chance, do my application early and be possibly able to go on a year abroad, or at the end of the 2.5 years, the Home Office will tell me you made your application too early, therefore you have to start again. And it's already been like almost like by the end of our application, it would be 20 years since we started it, and it was only supposed to take like 10 years. So I think there's like a lot of hoops that people aren't told that they need to go through. They're told like it's a step-by-step process and stuff like this, and they're giving like all this kind of like false hope that if you do this and if you show like you're able to add to the community, then you can get like your citizenship. And there's like a lot of people I know as well who've literally spent like their whole life in the UK, but because of what is going on right now, they're not considered like a British citizenship, and there's like a chance that they may be like deported to their own country as well. And it's like being brought up in this country and going back to this country that's supposedly supposed to be your home country, and not being able to like speak the language, not being able to adapt to the culture and stuff like that. I think it really like kind of traumatizes a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the mental health cost of the uncertainty, and people cannot make plans. I mean, that's been a difficult thing about lockdown, is that suddenly all the plans that we all made have just gone up in smoke, and we don't know when our jobs will change again. We don't know what it means for some of our jobs. We don't know what it means for our financial future. We don't know, all of those things about lockdown that have been really difficult mentally for many people. I mean, that's permanent for people who are going through the asylum system, because they are not able to make any plans. They have no concept. I mean, you literally could get a letter out the blue saying that your big interview is, coming up, or you don't get a letter for years. There's no time scale. There's no averages. There's no, you're just waiting, and you can't work, and you can't travel, and you can't survive. You're trying to get by on below the poverty line on £37 a week. Yes.
And I think
Annika, do you have
and I think it's like especially like frustrating for like a lot of people who come to this country and they have like degrees and things like that, and they're like, my mom came to the UK with a nursing degree, and then she wasn't able to use it. And then I think that at one point they told her, because she had gotten her degree in a different country, she would have to like redo it to actually be able to qualify as a nurse, because it wasn't like a British degree or whatever. And like I think it kind of like affects a lot of people who come to this country as like doctors and engineers and things like that, and then when they come here expecting to have this like good life because they were able to put in that hardship to get this degree, and they're being told actually your degree doesn't qualify, and you're not even going to be able to get a job, you're not even able to gonna get food for your family, you're not going to be able to provide for all this stuff. after they just put all this work into kind of like making themselves into someone who can actually help the community.
Yeah, and also for people who are like running from trauma and conflict and persecution. And then you would think that the basics that we could do as a country would be to make sure that people are fed, that they've got access to healthcare, that they've got access to, you know, basic human dignity and agency, and we do not do that. We literally strip that away from people over and over again and leave them in this indefinite place. The other thing that causes so much uncertainty is that you can get detained anytime. So a lot of people, as part of the conditions that they're living under, have to sign on at Brand Street, which is in Cessnock, and that's on like a timetable. So you have to turn up and you have to report. And at any of those appointments, you could just be detained. And once you're detained, you're in a detention centre. You might not be able to have a phone signal. You might not be able to contact your lawyer or your family or supporters who are here. And I mean, yeah, thankfully this week we just got news that a guy called Luke, who I supported 2 years ago to campaign, he's been given refugee status. But the reason we had to do that ridiculously intense campaign was because he was detained out of the blue, no notice, and told in 7 days, you are going on a plane, you're going back to Vietnam, where he knew he would be killed. So it's just so random, it's so kind of arbitrary, and people are living under the strain of that. And so no matter what trauma that they've been through, which has caused them to leave that country, we re-traumatize people because of the hostile environment. We are causing more trauma over and over again. And that doesn't just leave, you know. So just because you get your refugee status, you know, it's a good thing, but you're still working through the things that have happened to you in this country and before, all of which has been traumatic. Yeah. Annika, did you have other kind of examples?
No, I think you've both given really good examples. Robert isn't here, but one of the key functions that we really respect and admire Unity for is that if somebody has to attend a reporting appointment at the Home Office building on Brown Street, Unity provides this incredible thing where if you go to the Unity office before you go to your reporting event, they will make sure that you also come back from that reporting event, and we'll check in with you to make sure that you're okay, and we'll contact somebody who knows you if you don't return from that appointment. And while that's an incredibly important thing that happens, it's pretty disgraceful that a volunteer-run activist organisation has to provide that basic safety net for people who are at risk of detention at those reporting events. I think it's pretty gross. But I also wanted to say that I think now everybody who's attended this meeting now knows more about the no recourse system than the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who admitted that he didn't know anything about it over the last few weeks, despite many of us campaigning and writing to him pretty regularly. Kim, you've been talking about the figures for asylum support. Let's not forget that it has been raised by 26 pence this week as well. So we shouldn't forget that 26 pence that buys absolutely nothing as well. So this is the kind of state that we're living in, where there's the kind of structural issues as well as the kind of day-to-day indignities that are built that are kind of arise out of that structural horror.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. It's just horrendous what's happening, and the fact that the Prime Minister doesn't know about this policy, that it doesn't have people falling through the cracks, it actively pushes them through the cracks. And people campaign about that all the time. Like, all of the Glasgow MPs are good at raising those issues because they have constituents coming to them all the time saying, like, this is what's happening to me, because you just end up in this horrific situation where you can't go and phone up the council and declare yourself homeless. You do not have access to those systems. We had a really nice comment from someone called Susan saying, thank you for making these issues so live, especially with the lived experience from Elion. Another comment, so from Kirsty, what can we do to help? And one from John, what more can people do to support asylum seekers? is campaigning more important, or should I look to volunteer somewhere? Both. Yeah, so what should people be doing? Leonie, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think both is probably really good. I think volunteering will probably, for me personally, would probably be the best option, just to be able to give someone just that kind of help that they need. I think there's a lot of people who are struggling in silence, who would like that kind of like help, who need someone to talk to, or who just need somewhere to go because they're not able to get that from the government. I think donating as well where you can, or signing a petition where you can as well, just to kind of bring the issues forward, would be very good to help as well. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. A good combination of like practical work yourself, whether that's through volunteering or letter writing, but also kind of some of the, well, I guess there's a kind of crossover there with the campaigning and the political stuff. Most, as Kim said, most of the MSPs are sympathetic, and certainly many Scottish MPs are also sympathetic, but just kind of bolstering that locally, I think, is really important, and reassuring your elected members at local and national level that they have their electorate support, as that when they stand up against the hostile environment and against the UK's immigration policy, is something that you can do with relative ease, but I believe is really important to those MPs and those MSPs who just need to be reassured that they're on the right track and that they've got the support of their electorate behind them. I think some of the grassroots organisations, particularly in Glasgow, that ensure that people's basic needs are met, are some of the really brilliant ones to support. So organisations that ensure that people have got access to a dignified way of being able to cook and to eat are really, really important here. We see that, and then supporting organisations to find ways to accommodate, so that this that basic need of having shelter is the other sort of thing to donate to, I would say.
Yes, thank you. I can certainly put up a list of organisations in Glasgow on my Facebook. Like there's people, so donating, absolutely donating, and donating, it doesn't have to be a large amount, but at the moment, because there's been a bit of more focus on Black Lives Matter, that people are kind of throwing money about, which is great, but actually a small regular donation that you commit to means that organisations can plan their funds a bit better. So it doesn't have to be a lot, but if you can give it regularly, then that would really help, once things are out the news cycle. So things like the night shelter, we have Ubuntu Women's Shelter, there's Sahelia in Glasgow working with Black women, there's a number of different fantastic organisations, Scottish Refugee Council as well. I'll definitely be forgetting people, so I will put a list up. But yeah, donating, and if you can volunteer, then fantastic. There's lots of people, but yeah, also getting involved with your political representatives. I was pretty shocked as a councillor that because especially like the accommodation for people is outsourced to a private company, Glasgow City Council does not have a great deal of ongoing kind of work on this, and so it's taken me 2.5 years of pushing to get this as a regular item on a committee, to get asylum justice, to get immigration asylum matters at all on a regular thing, because it was sort of seen as like not our issue because it's for the MPs. And like, we're a dispersal city, we're a host city, there's so many things that the council really should be taking ownership of. Like, there is a lot that is not the council's fault, and as I said at the start, the Home Office is absolutely the architect of this mess, and even when we were all getting really angry at Mears or Serco, which has happened in the past couple of years, it's still the Home Office that has made this mess. So be very clear whenever there's a political discussion, like, what are people's views on this? What have you done about it? What have you what have you done to ensure better accountability and scrutiny would be one thing that I say people could do. Okay, I am wondering what is another question that's come in here. Okay, a question from Francis. What can the Scottish Greens do to celebrate the contribution of refugees and asylum seekers make to Scotland? I don't think this is always understood. Yeah, so we can broaden that out as well. It can be about the Scottish Greens. It can also be about what can political parties or political representatives do to celebrate the contribution that refugees and asylum seekers make to Scotland. Elion, do you want to come in?
I think it all stems from like a racial point of view, because I don't think that in Glasgow as a whole, there's not really much done to celebrate kind of like the contribution of like different cultures and different backgrounds to like Scotland. So I think I'm not really sure like what you can do to kind of like get that out there, but stuff like, I don't know, just being more aware of the people around you and things like that, just kind of being more welcoming towards people. Personally, for me, that would be more kind of appreciated than having like, I don't know, like a party or a festival or something like that. So yeah.
I have just a little thing to put on that I think there are some of the guys that we work with who are not at the moment feeling like they've got a contribution to make, and that whatever contribution they could make wouldn't be particularly well received. And I think there's also something about not placing that expectation on people, that there's something that has to be contributed beyond the beauty of just you existing, and there's something, and I don't know how you acknowledge that. I don't know how you celebrate it, other than just not placing a burden of responsibility to contribute on people. And I think there's something that we just need to kind of watch around that, that isn't a, like you said, only like a annual celebrate refugees week that just puts the focus on there's a kind of like somebody who's invented something, where actually it's the day-to-day lives that we all touch, and that people who touch our lives, that where the real contribution is in the kind of human contact. And then that's not always the thing that gets celebrated, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's such a myth of the good immigrant, and you have to be valid, you have to be good to be welcome, and you have to earn that, rather than people have the right to live with dignity. And sometimes we can get in the way that sometimes, even if it's more of a positive portrayal in the media of asylum or immigration issues, it can then turn into that trope as well of, look how heroic this person is, don't they deserve their citizenship? And that's really problematic, and we don't want to do that. And we also don't want to buy into this capitalist notion that you have to contribute to then be worthy, which, apart from anything else, is really ableist as well. Like, there's just so many problems with that. And the other thing is, obviously, apart from the pandemic, the thing of the past couple of weeks has been the global uprising in terms of Black Lives Matter. And there's a lot of work that we need to do. I think we have this perception sometimes in Glasgow that we're both the underdog, and that we are like the welcoming to everyone. We're all Jock Tans and Bairns, and unfortunately, that's not actually the case. That we have been a welcoming city to everyone, and as well as we're starting to have those conversations about our history of slavery and things, and that's really welcome, and I hope it continues beyond the news cycle. But as well as the past, there's a lot of stuff in our present that we can be talking about. And I wonder, Elion, if you want to just talk we've only just got a couple of minutes, but the past few weeks you've been involved in some activism around your own experiences when you were at school. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I went to like a school that had a very low minority of like Black people. So when I was in like my school at that moment, I want to say there was like 1,600 students, and maybe 10 of them were Black, maybe less than that. So it was a very like small minority, and there was a very kind of high level of racism in the school that wasn't really like spoken about. It wasn't like racism from pupils, but racism from teachers as well. Stuff that just like wasn't really talked about. So like as the Black Lives Matter movement had been kind of coming up, and people had been speaking more about like their experiences with racism in the UK, because like a lot of people weren't really believing that racism was a big problem in the UK. A lot of people were thinking, oh, it's like just an American problem. So more and more people started to speak on their kind of like their experience with racism in the UK, which was like a lot of them were like kind of very traumatic experiences and stuff. So there was at one point where my sister was kind of looking for support from her high school, as like there's a lot of like they speak a lot on being all inclusive and being so welcoming and stuff like that. So she was kind of looking for support from her high school, and she kind of like tweeted them on like in Twitter asking like if they're gonna show any support, and they kind of ended up blocking her after she tweeted that, which was very immature. So when she did that, I kind of like got a bit kind of annoyed in a way, because when I was in high school, I experienced a lot of racism, and like I thought like as a school environment they would be able to show their support, because everything about that school speaks about being all inclusive and being welcoming and being how diverse the school is, when it's not really. So I was kind of like agitated, and a bunch of us former students from that school came together, and we kind of like shown our experience at that school, kind of all the unspoken stuff, because the school itself is known for being like a very like top tier school in a way. They're known for having a very good educational system and things like that. So a lot of people were kind of like shocked and surprised when they heard that there was a lot of things that were happening that wasn't brought to light. Like there was a lot of discrimination. For example, I was speaking to one student, and he told me that the teachers used to make animal noises at him, and there was some other students telling me how like the teachers used to like pick on them aggressively, like not to like, there's like a normal kind of way where a teacher would like kind of make jokes and stuff, but it was to a point where it felt kind of like degrading to their self-esteem and confidence. Like there was a girl telling me how like there was at one point in class where she had like braids like mine, and people would like set them on fire and they would cut them in classes and stuff like that. And the teachers would all be like witnessing to this like kind of stuff, but they would like never speak upon it. And I know there was like multiple instances where I spoke up on like this stuff that happened to me, but like nothing was ever done of it. Or in some cases, like if I would like retaliate or something like that, tell someone to like get off me or something, I would be the one who would be put in like trouble and stuff like that. And there was like a lot of students who would say the same things to me. So it kind of like validated kind of like my experience at high school. And there was a lot of students who were like reading it, who went through the same experience, who really thought like they were just like bad students, or they thought that they went through this alone and stuff like that. So it was kind of good to kind of see like I wasn't the only one going through this, but it was also good to kind of get a lot of experiences together and get that kind of support. I also got like some support from Ross Greer, who was able to kind of help me out and stuff like that. So there was a lot of when I was sharing the stories and stuff like that, I did get like a lot of attraction towards it, because at one point the school had actually accidentally tweeted something racist from like the Twitter account, so it ended up in like the newspapers and stuff like that. So it kind of like solidified the unspoken racism that was at the school that was never taken care of and stuff like that. So yeah, after they tweeted that, there was like a lot of backlash to the school and stuff like that. But I personally got some backlash as well because of what I was doing. The stories kind of got picked up, and there was like a lot of viewings and stuff like that towards them. So there was a lot of people who were telling me that racism in Scotland doesn't exist, and there was a lot of people who were telling me that how can I say that about teachers when they're trying to educate you and you're speaking bad upon their names? There was a lot of people who didn't believe that they were actually, like, there was a lot of people who were the perpetrators of this like kind of acts. They would, who like knew it was them, and they would like say, oh, it was just a joke, it wasn't like supposed to be taken seriously. And it's like, how is setting someone's hair on fire in the middle of class just a joke? Like, you get what I mean? So yeah, I got some backlash, but it was I also like sent a couple emails to like the council of that school and stuff like that, just to show them that there was kind of a problem that hadn't been taken care of. And another girl who had sent the same email as me, who has already gotten a response from them, but I'm still waiting to hear my for my response. And it's kind of like I don't know, it's just a bit of a joke because we sent the exact same email and she has a response, I haven't gotten a response, and she just so happens to be white and I just so happen to be black. But I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it. But yeah, so we've been working a lot on trying to like, me and like a couple of former students have been working with like younger students to try and like hopefully there'll be a safe environment for when they go back to school, because I'm a little bit worried that because of everything that's happened right now, because the school is aware of what's going on, that we have spoken out about this, I'm kind of a little bit worried that when they go back to school, it'll become 10 times harder for them and stuff like that. So I'm hopefully, like, what we're doing now is just giving them kind of emotional support, because a lot of people don't understand like how much this kind of affects people in a way. A lot of people think, oh, it's just one comment, it's just one joke, it's not gonna really do anything. But there's like, some students are telling me how like they feel like there's some like hairstyles they're not able to feel comfortable wearing and stuff like that. And these are like students who've left that school like 5 years ago telling me like, oh, I can't wear this kind of hairstyle because it like makes me feel uncomfortable. I can't say these kind of words because I feel like people are staring at me, things like that. When I talk like this, when I have to put on a certain accent because I feel like I will be like persecuted if I speak like this kind of way, things like that. So I feel like people don't really understand how kind of like racism really affects a lot of people and how it kind of eats away at their self-esteem and confidence. So what we're trying to do now is kind of build kind of that emotional bridge where people are able to talk about these things, people are able to know that it doesn't really, it shouldn't really kind of like affect them, because it really does like eat away at you. So we're trying to help them. We're also trying to give them a safe space where they're able to kind of congregate, I would say, after like school or something like that, so they're able to come together and feel like they're not the only ones going through this. Because when it's like you're in a place where you're legally required to be there, and then you have all these things that you have to kind of do, because there's like all these schoolworks and stuff like that, and then you have to deal with the racism from the students, racism from the teachers, racism from the headmaster. There's literally no support for these students, and then having to go home and then to deal with all these things. Because I don't know how to explain, but like African parents in a way are brought up to kind of like, there's like racism, like in Africa, racism doesn't exist. And when your child is coming to you and telling you that the teachers are being rude to them, I feel like a lot of like, from not from my perspective, but like from a lot of students that I spoke to, they were saying how like their parents just told them, oh, maybe like you're acting a certain way, or maybe that you're doing a certain thing that's making this happen to you. And it's like in a way, African parents are kind of brought up to like make their kids strong and like think all these things are just like a passing weakness or something like that, they'll be able to get through. So yeah, there was like a lot of kids who were telling me like they don't have the support at school and they feel like they can't get the support at home, and it's just like all these things are just clashing and just hitting them all at once, and they're not able to do it. So yeah, we're trying to work on like a safe space where they're able to like speak upon this thing and stuff like that, and where they're able to share their stories, where they're able to talk about how it comes, like especially in like minority schools where like children of color and stuff like that are the minority, where their voices aren't getting heard and stuff like that. And yeah, so that has been a very, very long week.
Yeah, and I mean, it will be the same in so many schools right across Scotland. And so I think what you've done has been so important to give voice to those things that people have never been able to say before. And one thing I think that white people can be doing to be in solidarity is to be listening and to be believing you, like believing people when they say, no, we absolutely do have racism, we absolutely do have this experience on a day-to-day basis, and it is really uncomfortable, and you need to believe us that it happens and stop kind of hiding from that. I'm really sorry, we're out of time. I could talk about this all day, and it's been an absolute pleasure to listen to both of you. Thank you so much, Elion. Thank you so much, Annika. Thank you so much to Robert, who for today and unfortunately couldn't be with us. But thank you for everything that you're doing and for the work that you've done. Thank you to everyone who's been watching and sending in comments. I'm sorry we didn't get through all your questions, but I hope you'll agree this has been brilliant. I thank you for watching, and remember, next week you can come back, and next week will be Patrick Harvey leading a discussion on the difficulties facing people who are working in the hospitality sector. So thank you so much, both of you, again, for your time today. Really appreciate it, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.